Okay, today I want to look at C for consent. Consent is a bit of a woolly one sometimes with dogs. Sometimes people find it quite hard to understand. Oh, it's my dog, why does it need to consent to things? But consent is a really important concept, and teaching our dogs how to opt into things and listening to them when they say no is a really crucial thing for creating a good relationship with them and creating a safe relationship with them. So it's important to understand what consent looks like in dogs and why it's so crucial to how we want to handle them. So the first thing we want to look at is how consent affects the way you give affection to your dog. And some dogs absolutely love human affection. Some dogs like to be kissed and cuddled and picked up and carried around, and other dogs hate it. But there's a big group of dogs right in the middle of that spectrum that tolerate it. And I, certainly one of my previous dogs, I always thought he loved cuddles because he would quite happily sit there while you wrapped your arms around him and gave him a big hug. But the more I learned about body language, the more I understood that he was just tolerating that affection. He didn't enjoy it, he just didn't object. You coming in? So, the reason that consent is so important when we're giving affection to our dogs is that working within the dog's comfort zone prevents aggression and prevents bad reactions. So if you read the early warning signs that your dog is unhappy and you stop, your dog doesn't feel the need to escalate to growling at you, snapping at you, or biting to try and make you go away. The main things to look out for when we're approaching our dogs to give affection is look for the subtle signs that they might not be happy with that. So tensing up, freezing, turning their head away or turning their eyes away. If you push past that, you might get them licking their lips or physically tilting away from you. You might also get them moving quite rapidly, looking away and looking back, or shifting from side to side. You may also see the whites of their eyes. We call that whale eye, where their eyes get really big or they do a bit of side eye towards you. And I've got Gimli sitting next to me, so I'm just gonna lean in and see how he feels about me approaching. So you saw a little turn of the head away there, so I've immediately backed off. Whereas in this video that I'm going to show, he is quite happy getting affection, and Gimli is very affectionate, but only on his terms. So in this little video clip, I'm doing what we call consent testing, where he's enjoying the physical affection, I'm stroking the back of his head, I'm rubbing his ears, but every now and again I stop and I withdraw the affection. And that's me testing, is he still comfortable with this? And as you can see, every single time he nudges me, he leans into me, he's happy with that. So we can continue. So that's consent testing. And if your dog doesn't enthusiastically ask to continue, most of the time they're telling you that, okay, they might not have bitten your face off, but they weren't happy with what you just did there. So if the consent testing doesn't show that they want to continue, you should stop and you should respect their space. The next way in which consent can be really useful for us is through cooperative handling. So this is any type of handling that your dog might find difficult or aversive. And that might include putting on collars and harnesses. It might include towel drying, things like grooming or veterinary care, anything that really your dog wouldn't choose to do, but we have to do anyway. And I've got a little video of how I approach cooperative handling for things like putting harnesses on. Basically, I teach my dogs to voluntarily put their head through the harness and get a reward afterwards. I don't have to lure them to stand there. I don't have to coax their head through that harness hole. I just offer them the harness, they put their head through, they get something nice out of it. And if they back away, I need to question why they've backed away. The same with handling paws, handling faces. If they would rather back away, I haven't earned their trust enough for them to be comfortable with that. This is something I had to put a lot of work into with Gimli when we first got him. He could handle being petted, but if you leaned in and tried to do anything sort of formal to him with checking his teeth or checking his eyes, he would get very upset very quickly. So cooperative handling taught him that actually he has a voice. He can say no and the handling will stop. And now he's at the point where he will let you take things out of his mouth, check his eyes, pull ticks off his face. He's no longer a difficult dog to handle. But that leads to the question, what do you do when no isn't an option? So a lot of the time, it's something that quite often comes up when I try to teach about consent in my classes. People say, oh, what if my dog doesn't consent to being on the lead? Should he just be off the lead all the time? What if he doesn't consent to walking on the pavement? Should I let him walk in the road? That's not really a consent issue. Consent is about your dog's control of his own body. So it's not about him consenting to get the lead on, but if he finds getting the lead on unpleasant, you need to look at why. Have you previously grabbed him and wrestled the lead on? Have you put the lead on him to force him to do things he doesn't enjoy? Fix those issues, and the consent of getting the lead on is no longer really an issue. But sometimes no isn't an option, and it's the same as when you're working with humans. Sometimes things have to happen that you're not happy with. You might need to go and get a tooth pulled out. You're not choosing to go and get your teeth pulled out, but it's maybe medically necessary at that point. So when no isn't an option, I'm not going to ask the question, because it's worse for me to say, is this okay? You've said no, I'm going to do it anyway. It's better to not ask at all in that situation. So that's relevant right now because Oliver has a paw injury. He has a broken claw that's broken all the way to the quick, and it needs cleaned out twice a day. That's unpleasant for him. He is not going to choose to let me do it. You know, if I said, oh, sweetheart, do you want to come and sit beside me and I'll poke at this very sore foot? He's going to say no. So what do? I don't ask. I distract him instead. And in this video, you can see that what I'm doing is giving him a licky mat with cheese on it. That gets his nose down and it keeps him still, and it lets me clean that paw as much as I want to. That doesn't teach him long term that this type of handling is okay. It just distracts him. So we work on the force-free handling in between. We let him consent to getting his feet touched. We let him say no if he wants to say no. But when we really need to get something done, we find a way to make it less unpleasant for him. So that's how we approach consent with our dogs. And it's why it's important to look at how they feel about specific types of handling. Are they okay with you giving affection? Are they comfortable with you putting on collars and harnesses, doing the kind of handling and maintenance that you need to do to keep your dog healthy? And if we teach them to opt in, then we build a relationship based on trust, and our dog never feels the need to grumble at us, escalate to biting or snapping, and we have a much happier dog that is willing to let you do these kind of things to them.